Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon session of COPDI. We actually have three different topics today, and each one will be treated as its own segment. So first up, we are going to work and discuss about incident documentation. So we're taking a little bit different approach on this. For today, we think about maybe writing the incident report, and that'll certainly be part of that. But there's a lot of ways that that incident gets documented. So it doesn't matter if you're a company officer, a unit officer on an ambulance, command officer, right? We all are documenting that incident a variety of different ways every day. Rarely is it a time where we would not document something that we responded on. And of course, based upon the severity of the incident or the complexity of the incident or legal requirements, really drives a lot of how we proceed with that incident documentation. So our first session today is going to talk about that. If you are logged in, of course you would be logged in. If you're logged in, we're interested in knowing what platform you're watching on, right? This is something new for us. We're still working through some of the better ways of trying to send this stuff out. So we're interested where you're watching it. First of all, who you are, where you're watching it, what platform are you using, meaning internet provider type of thing, and then are you using a cell phone, a tablet, station computer, all that kind of stuff. All that is important to us as we move through. You'll see over probably the next few sessions of this, there'll be some variances, and then it'll help us lock into what seems to be working best. All right, so our performance objective for today is that we want our participants to review incident documentation as it's related to the incident commander and the organization. Remember, there's two important pieces to this. When you are done with that incident documentation, it really then becomes official record of the organization. And while we often hit the complete button and send that thing away in Fire App or to EPCR or whatever, and we may never see it again at our level, you can trust me that there are plenty of outside sources that request these documents, especially fire incidents where there's been some damage, vehicle fires and structure fires where they're looking for a report in terms of insurance stuff, verification that an incident occurred at an address. Then, of course, there are going to be many more requests for EMS reports. So the documentation is important. I know sometimes, you run a bunch of calls throughout the course of the shift, or as an incident commander, it's the end of the night. But it's important to get those incident documentations in. My time in fire investigations, I learned very quickly that on many building fires, the next day, somebody is looking for a report to help verify that the fire department went. We understand sometimes it takes a while to sort all that out, but it is important to get those reports in because that can help get that insurance process going. Otherwise, the property owner is spinning their wheels waiting on a report to be generated. So those things are important. We know we harp on it about the time factor, but that's what's important. So our objective is we want you to be able to be better at understanding all the different ways that an incident is documented. As an overview, as you know, with many of our COPDI sessions, we try to have some type of quiz that goes back and jogs your memory depending upon when you would have learned about this stuff, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the different types of incident documentation. We'll look at policy that drives incident documentation, and then we'll talk about any issues. So that's the plan. All right, so let's take a few minutes here. I'll give you, I'll say 8 minutes to work on what do you remember about incident documentation. So test your memory. I'll read them out first, then you can work on them yourself. We do need input from the class. There are no students here. It's myself and Chief Thomas, so you're going to have to provide some input back. I'd like you to list different types of incident documentation that we may use here in Montgomery County that might be available to us. Using 2 of those 8 types, whatever you picked, it doesn't matter. List a legal issue related to each one of those types. Number 3, I'd like you to name 2 MCFRS policies that direct or discuss incident documentation. You don't have to name them verbatim, at least know generally what they are and where you would go to find them. Then, number 4, I'd ask you just in your own words, define discoverable as it relates to evidence in the legal system. So I'm going to give you 8 minutes to work on that, and then we'll come back. There are no more than these 4, it's these 4. We'll come back and take a look at that. Clock starts now. Got about 5 minutes left on this. Take about 5 to finish that up. So folks watching, you're going to have to be able to read back some of your answers. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to ask you for, hey, list your types. And I'm going to list them on the board, and we're going to talk about those once we get them listed. So please be ready to type some of those in, please. Minutes left. 3 minutes, finish up. All right, I'm going to give you 1 minute. 1 minute in counting, and then be ready to reply some. I'm going to list these on the whiteboard so that we can have some discussion about this stuff. All right, here we go. I'm going to move to the whiteboard, probably move back and forth a little bit between the podium and the whiteboard, but I want to start listing some types of incident documentation that are available to us here in MCFRS in Montgomery County, Maryland. So let me scoot over here. And I'll give you the first one. I'm going to say the Fire App report. And under Fire App is the unit and the incident. All right, I'm looking for some other folks. What do we got there, Chief Thomas? All right. Okay, so RMAP. Right, EPCR report. And the other types. So I asked you to list 8 because that forces you outside what we would think is the normal, hey, here's my documentation.
CIRC report. CIRC
Okay.
report.
So that's the Collision Incident Review Committee report. I may put a question mark there, but I'll leave that there for now.
Yep. Significant incident report.
Okay. So significant incident report.
All right, let me go back. I skipped one. First report of injury.
First report of injury. So that's, what do we call that today? We don't call that, we still call it slang, first report of injury. What's the real term?
Notice.
First notification of loss. First notification of loss.
All right, WUFU report.
Must have some safety people watching.
Happens to be a former safety guy.
There you go.
Significant incident.
All right, significant incident report.
Accident investigation.
Okay.
After action.
Okay, after action report.
We've got enhanced after action report.
All right, enhanced after action report.
And cause and origin.
All right. And speaking from my fire investigator hat, that's going to be an origin and cause investigation. And the others.
That's it so far.
So looking at these, I'm going to call these, and actually you did a good job of listing them this way. I'm going to call these official.
Got one more point here.
All right.
So while not written, all of our radio returns traffic are recorded and could be called upon, typing into discoverable material.
Yes. So we have, let me switch to the throw up the next slide on the PowerPoint. Oop, not that fast. So these are some categories, right? We can lump these different ways. So there's really official and unofficial, and what many of you already listed were those that come to mind as official documentation, right? And on most any given day, hey, we're probably doing this stuff right here and that stuff right there, and the other doesn't apply to most of the things that we do. However, right, as we get more complex incidents, then these other things come into play. We also have what I'm going to lump into another category, unofficial. And you'll see where I'm going with that. We got a couple more answers in. What do you got?
All right, civilian fire service casualty,
Okay.
training database, audio inside the command post, and helmet cam video, dash cam video.
Yeah, right. So we often are thinking paper stuff back in the day of the paper reports and moving that to electronic, but there are plenty of other things. Somebody mentioned the radio audio file. Right, so there are audio files that exist, right? So battalion chiefs and above, they can request the audio file from ECC, get the tape back from the incident, listen to that. They can listen to it in real time, summed, whatever, be able to listen to what the event occurred. Somebody mentioned dash cam, right? So the battalion platforms have a dash cam in there. I'll come back to that in a little bit. Somebody mentioned helmet cams.
Yep, training database and civilian fire service casualty.
Right, casualty report gets done when we have people that are injured, right? What else do we got here? What about, so paper, digital, public, private. What about private? Privately owned stuff that might be incident documentation. I want you to think about that. So somebody give me an answer on that. Privately owned that could provide incident documentation. We see it more with law enforcement, but hey, it may be part of what we do also. Go.
All right, gear inspection records, especially with line of duty deaths.
Okay.
Security cam video.
Yep. So let's start there, right? All these Ring doorbell, all that kind of crap out there to Nest, private security stuff. That can show a lot of stuff. Look at the gas explosion in Baltimore City a month ago, right? There was, I believe it was Ring doorbell footage from across the street or just catty corner when that place blew up. So unofficial, right, is private security stuff. Something else that kind of goes along with that would be private, but not security video. Go.
Bystander video.
Yep, bystander video, and what are they shooting that on? Probably their cell phone. Today, anyway, would be cell phone video. What else?
I think the last one I have is personal notes.
Okay, personal notes are important.
Here's another one. Social media posts.
Yes, right, social media posts. In fact, incident commanders, actually probably all of us, right, on a big incident, you got social media posts before the incident's over, right? I've been on an incident as the incident commander, and actually I got pretty good helicopter video footage of the incident that I'm on, and I can't even see all the incident, but the helicopter, because they're showing live footage from whatever Fox 5 helicopter or somebody. So social media, whether it's ours or not, right? As a side note, social media is one of the big things that EMG uses for evaluating damage in neighborhoods and so forth, right? So today, you got that hurricane in the Gulf coming up on the Gulf Coast. Well, right, social media will be one of those things that will help assess where the damage is, where the problems are, right? Eventually, they may lose comms, but early on, you'll get a good assess, and then afterwards, you also will get a good assessment of social media about damage and where problems are occurring. What else we got?
How about the command chart?
Ah, the command chart. Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure where this one's going, but the Waffle House Index.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the Waffle House Index is.
Can you elaborate on that?
Whoever typed that in.
After action reports, I think we mentioned that one.
I'm going to throw YouTube up here, only because I want to come back and talk about that. All right. So we're going to leave some of that up there. I do want to come back and probably talk about each one of these at least briefly, or clump some of them together. So there's a lot of ways, many ways, that our incidents are documented. Our incidents are documented by ourselves. They clearly are documented by the public, and that becomes more and more prevalent every day. You may see something during the incident. You may see something a little bit later in the day. Heck, you may not see something until a couple weeks out. Video surfaces of the incident that you were involved in. So what becomes important is when we have a very serious incident that involves or requires an enhanced after-action report, that's something that the person who's putting that together, they're not going to throw that together in a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon. It's going to take a little while, because if we've been driven to generate that, then that probably means there is a lot of other stuff that we got to look at, right? I know myself as an incident commander, especially on a fire incident, one of the things I'm looking for is the social media stuff, right? Because in the 1st Battalion, pretty high density population, a lot of people out there, a lot of people shooting stuff, video stuff, all that kind of stuff. It gets posted pretty quick. It's pretty common to find that. I like to try to see that, to see what it is that I didn't see, right, in terms of those applications. All righty. So I'll come back to some of this stuff. Somewhere in your quiz it said name 2 policies, right? So we do have a couple policies, and one of them deals with reporting requirements and records management, and that one's been out for a while. And then there is the incident response policy, Appendix T, which was put out after the initial IRP came out. So I want to take a look at both of those. So we're going to switch to my screen now. That's going to be behind me. I'm going to operate off a different computer. Hopefully. There we go. So, quick links, right? The department has worked hard to make quick links a go-to place. There is just tons of stuff on quick links for you to be able to see that. So let's drill down. How do I get there, right? So if you're not familiar with quick links, you don't use it a lot. Couple ways to get into things. We'll start with go to the Fire Chief tab. You go to the Fire Chief's tab. Down below pops right up, policies, Fire Chief general orders, that kind of stuff. Let's go with MCFRS policies and procedures. All the current ones are there listed. Sometimes they're cross-referenced. So if we scroll down through here, we are going to find incident reporting. So let's start here. So MCF policy 02-01 AMIII deals with incident reporting requirements and records management. The big policy talks about a lot of stuff. This talks about when you search for reports that aren't complete, all those particular parts. Where I want to get to is the part about content. So bear with me for a minute. I want to say it's on page 12. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Page 7 starts some discussion, and on page 7 talks about data fields compiled, right, for the different parts of that infos report. And really what happens is the Fire app info dumps into the state reporting system for the most part, and then that's how data is tracked. And in Maryland, some of the money that comes from the state, one of the grants is actually tied to your data that you provide. So data is really important, not meaning that it's done timely and it's complete and so forth. So when you fill out those data fields, that is really important. So it talks about collision report, incident report, right? So for example, what do you talk about in a building fire? What happened? What did you do? Occupant status, priorities, any challenges that occurred, all those kind of things. That is outlined in the policy in terms of what gets put in the narrative of that report. Scrolling down, talks about on a collision report, right? The person responsible for the incident reporting on the collision report. This is the kind of stuff that you put in there. Remember that on the collision report, and actually on any of these reports, we are not including patient information, right? That needs to go on that EPCR. So that can be a little disjointed because you think about it, chances are pretty good the care provider who is doing the EPCR is not doing the incident report because there's probably an officer doing an incident report, right? You had a bad wreck, couple vehicles, couple traumas, they went different places. So you want to be careful about that, minimize the patient info. It's okay to say who is where, right? Medic 139, or excuse me, Medic 713 took the driver of the brown sedan priority 2 category A to shock trauma. Right? That's fine, but in terms of more patient details, leave that for the EPCR. Unit report, right? So the unit report is done, talks about what each individual unit did, what did they do, what action did they take, were they given any specific directions, what did they carry out. I'm not going to talk specific about the EMS report, that's a whole nother module there, right? So the bottom line is that whole policy does address not only who is responsible, but what the content should be. It's I always thought about it myself, right? So think about a basic EMS reporting. What did you go for? What did you find? What was your assessment? What did you do? How did you leave? And if you follow that, that's a pretty good rule to think about even on the fire side, right? So I go for a vehicle fire, right? Responded to a vehicle fire, arrived on scene, I found a vehicle fire. What did I do? Extinguish the fire using an 1 3/4 tack line, whatever. Assessment maybe about how it started, right, if you're going to do it, or a fire investigator is, and then how did you leave, right? Release the scene to Montgomery County Police, release the scene to the property owner, right? So that concludes the whole thing. I think the handshake at the end is important. How did you leave it? The other part you have to keep in mind is that if you do request fire investigations and they complete a report, then that is going to be the report that becomes important for insurance purposes, right? So you want to make sure that if the fire investigators are going to generate that report, that they provide you some info at the end so that you can complete the data part on the fire app report. So those are important. Touch base with that incident commander, or excuse me, touch base with the fire investigator in charge. They're all very good about it. They generally send it out as soon as they know you were in charge. They send out their brief in terms of a origin and cause and damage, and then you can just include that in your narrative. That allows there to be one clear narrative and not two competing narratives. So that becomes important. All right, so the second policy, so this is a good one to review, right? Talks about who, when, where, why, what. The second policy is the IRP policy. And the IRP policy then goes back to those things we talked about, the hot wash, the significant incident report, the after accident report, the significant incident investigative report, right? Those are part of Appendix T. So we'll scroll down through here. Clicked the wrong one, sorry. Didn't have my glasses on. All right, after action reporting, Appendix T of the IRP. So it talks about a number of different levels of after action reporting. You have the hot wash, which is on-scene discussion of the event. You have the written after-action report, and that after-action report is generated by the incident commander based upon completion of the fire app report. So that's a forced choice in the completion of the fire app report that gets you to the after-action report, and you have to follow the guidelines then if your incident meets that requirement. So when you see, for those folks who are not command officers, when you see the after-action reports come out, that was generated by the person completing the incident report that then sent them a link to another document to complete that report. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. You then have an enhanced after-action report, and that's going to be a more complex incident. I'll say a second alarm fire was something special. Maybe there were some firefighter injuries or a civilian casualty or something like that that generates that. The enhanced after-action report often is done at the direction of the duty chief or the operations chief or somewhere in that level of the organization that says, hey, that incident was significant on us. This needs to be an enhanced, and the enhanced end up being a presentation style format in addition to the written stuff. And then there is the significant incident investigative report, and that would be, I'll say a really significant incident. Let's just say I'll use the Mayday, firefighters injured, a lot of stuff happening. Maybe we used a Twin Brook, right? The Twin Brook Mayday that occurred a number of years ago, where the fire chief summoned a investigative report put together by a bunch of people over a period of time. So those are the levels. We most commonly see the hot wash done after incidents, and that's driven by the policy. And then after that, we most commonly see the after-action report, the significant incident report that comes out via email to everybody, says, hey, this is generated. So I want to show how to get there, to look at previous ones. I don't have Fire App loaded on the computer, so I can't show you how to get there that way. But if we go to Quick Links and go to the Operations Division and expand that, then you are going to go down through, scrolling down, you'll find reports, lessons, and studies, a bunch of stuff in there. One of the things you'll find, significant incident reports, right? And then enhanced after action. So let's look at significant incident, 2012, the present. It's going to send you to another link area. So there they are. It asks you, do you want to submit a report? I'll go back to that in a moment. Let's just look at after action reviews, see what we got posted for 2020. So these are all ones that would have been generated by an incident commander. When they filled out Fire App, they got notification, hey, you met the requirement, you got to fill out the form. So we'll use this one here. This looks like April 8th. Chief Ramashadi had to do one with a PIC several trapped. And they would have typed all this in. They have a couple different ways of doing it. If you have not done one before as a command officer, probably the better thing to do is to type your narrative in a word processing document like Word or something, and then copy and paste, because that allows you to have better editing stuff. But you don't have to. I don't. I just type right away and just edit it as I go, but some people do it. So there's a general narrative. There's some situation awareness stuff like, hey, how did you learn about what's going on, right, as the incident commander? What were the objectives? In other words, what objectives did you establish as the incident commander? What was your ICS structure? What did it look like? What things drove your decisions? In other words, what intel did you get that forced you to make some decisions? Lessons learned, right? Sometimes there's a lot, sometimes there's not. Recommendations for change. Sometimes there's recommendations, other times there is not. We also have the ability to add a couple photos, not tons of photos, but there's generally at least one or two photo there on that. So that's the significant incident review that can come out. Incident report, right, that's generated, and of course that's forced by Fire Act. So that's a good document. So I think what you do have to be careful about this. We didn't talk a lot about legal things, right? But so things have to match up. So somebody wrote an incident report. On this incident, somebody wrote patient care reports, and now we have a significant incident report. I would hope all three of those somewhat mirror each other. Now we realize the EPCR reports are going to be patient focused, right? But they have to be careful about, is there other stuff in the EPCR report that somebody just chose to write in there randomly without good intel about what happened in the incident? So for the incident commander, be good. What does the incident report say? You should have written it. What does it translate to in your significant incident report? Because that's another official document of the organization, right? So this all needs to be married up, be similar. Doesn't mean you can't add opinion in. You could add opinion. You could say, in my opinion, that's fine. But the facts need to be true across the board. Let's look at a enhanced after action. We don't have many of those. So again, if you go back here to the home screen of MCFRS after action reviews, go up top, you see enhanced after action reviews. And here's one from 2018. So this was Belpre Road. And you can see it's done in a presentation format. Open that up. And basically it allows somebody to use it in a PowerPoint or a Google slide or something like that, right? And it provides many of the same points, only in further depth. So I have not had to do one of these. A few folks have. They're talking about this one was significant enough about some flow path stuff, so they added some flow path stuff in there. So these are actually the good company drills, number one, for our company officers to go back and grab some of these. But they also are good documentation, 5, 10 years down the road, you go back and say, well, didn't we have something like this before on Belpre Road? Let's talk about it, what's happened on Belpre before. So that's another item out there. So this one was put together by Chief Vanderen, Chief Mann, Chief Ryman, and Chief Bailey. Unlike the significant incident report that's probably going to be generated by one person, this report is going to be a little bit bigger incident, maybe multiple alarm, maybe multiple divisions, a branch, whatever. And that probably is most likely going to have the input of more than one chief officer. So anyway, those are the two policies. I think it's worthy of always going back and look at that. Quick Links is your place to go find those. Quick Links is also your place to go there and find those reports in terms of the significant incident after action report. All right, let's go back to the whiteboard. I'm going to leave the screen up, but I want to go back to the whiteboard. Let's just have some discussion. Does anybody have any questions? I know I haven't asked anything here. Any questions from the audience?
None yet.
None yet. All right. All right, let's look. So we talked about Fire App, talked about unit reports, incident reports, EPCR. That's a whole thing in and of itself. We talked about after action reports. We talked about enhanced after action. We identified the significant incident report, which is what I just showed. Sorry, this thing keeps sticking here. What else? Fire service casualty report, that comes in Fire app. That's a forced choice in there. As soon as you say you had somebody injured, that pops up. You can't get away from it. O&C, that comes from the fire investigators. They send out a little briefing that is going to be important to you. I don't have one to show, but they do a good job of that. Lists what they believe the origin and cause to be, and damages, and things like smoke detectors, sprinkler systems. So it's an important document to grab, to ask for before the incident commander does the incident report, right? Just don't bump that thing out without having that if you used fire investigators. And before they leave the scene, talk to whoever's in charge, say, hey, don't forget to send me a copy of your findings. And of course, you know, I mean, if it remains under investigation, then that's just what happens. It remains under investigation. We have those sometimes, right? And if it's an arson case, further up, follow-up may occur, and that report may not get done right away. Doesn't mean you can't start it. You can start your incident report, right? You may not finish it for another couple of days, another shift, another couple of days till the fire investigators get more detail back to you. Doesn't happen too often, but it is a possibility. All right, personal notes. I want to talk about that briefly. So personal notes are important. Those are things that you would write. Back in the day, many officers carried a piece of paper or tablet in their pocket, right, with notes that they may make. That all is important. That is official documentation of the incident. In a court of law, that's official documentation of the incident. Many years ago, as a captain on an auto fire, go figure, on an auto fire, my personal notes were used in that case. It was an arson fire, but my notes were used only because they got brought up, and then somebody said, well, do you have your personal notes? And I'm like, yes, I do. I had a whole little book that had a whole bunch of stuff. What else? Command chart. Let's talk about the command chart, right? So the command chart is documentation. The command chart tells a story. So I'm going to ask the camera guys, you don't have to zoom in on the command chart, but so this is one of our command charts. I'm going to go to the website here in a moment. One of our command charts. However you use the command charts, in almost all cases, it is going to tell the story of the incident as you progress. Most all of us are going to start over here, and as the incident progresses, we're going that way. We're dividing things up. We're making other assignments. More people are showing up. At some point, hey, incident's under control, and we may start a new one. So if you were to look at my larger scale incidents, right, where I've called for help, task force or greater, you're generally going to find at least two charts. The first one goes until the fire was placed under control, and then the second one starts after that. Why? Because you probably sent some folks home, right? So the first one looks a little messy, but it tells the story. Here's how things went left to right. The next one starts, okay, they all went, we still got another hour or so of work to do. What are we going to do? You take this, that helps you build out your narrative in terms of how you document the incident. So that command chart is pretty darn important, right? We don't have an easy place to keep those. Some folks just keep them in a file for themselves. There's no clear direction as to where to put them. So I would tell you that they are the same as your personal notes, right? I have almost every command chart that I ever filled out of any significance. Any task force or better, I got it somewhere in my office. So let's look at the website just for folks to know where they can go find command charts. So again, back to quick links, the operations division. You're going to scroll down slowly. Stand by. Oh, I scrolled too fast. I should have followed my own rules. Scroll slowly. Under daily tools, operation guidelines, ops guidelines, and forms. It doesn't say command chart. Op guidelines and forms. You click there, whole bunch of stuff. So here's your command checklists for different things. You got water resources, right? So stuff on the water-related stuff. You got command action guides over there. Those were the guides that we find in the vehicles, active shooters, all those kind of things. And then down in the corner on the bottom right or middle right is all the command charts. So pop that up. One is the horizontal version. So when we talk about horizontal, what that means is that your units coming on the call, right, that you write on the call, go across the top, right? So there's engines, RIC, right, trucks, whatever. Divisions and groups down below, in case you haven't seen that before. Then you have the vertical one, which is more traditional to what we've had in the past. Doesn't mean it's any better, it's just what some folks are used to. So your units running the call are this way, divisions and groups, place to draw. I didn't show you the back, right? The back of both charts are the same. Gives you a place to draw a diagram, the Mayday stuff, right? What do you do in the Mayday? What happens there? Tactical considerations. So there is a front and back to these things. There are a couple other there. Oh, sorry. There's a water command chart, and this was built partially, well, primarily out of swift water responses. So the folks that worked at Battalion 2, Battalion 3 area where they run the river, this is that chart that you're going to use. So for our command officers, right, that don't go there too often, I'm going to tell you that one, if you're working there, we're doing some volunteer command officer coverage there, you're going to want one of these pretty readily accessible at your side in that command vehicle. So they did a good job of organizing that for you. You then have an MCI command chart. Right, so this one is on there to help you out with mass casualty incidents, variety of different components on that. It does have a back to it as well. It gives some quick guidance to the various components, medical comms leader, treatment unit leader, what they would do. You could actually probably hand these out to some folks if you had to, meaning that on an MCI and you assign somebody as the treatment unit leader and they're like, what do I do? Hey, flip it over, follow the directions. And then there are some major charts, right? So this is some of the older stuff, but this was a major chart, meaning a huge incident where you're going to have branches and so forth, and local charts. We kind of moved away from those. They still exist there, but most everybody is using the all hazards, horizontal and vertical. That gets you started, right? That should be able to run you up until the arrival of the command bus. The way I look at it, if we move the command post from my vehicle to a bigger platform, that's a huge event, campaign, going to be here a while. This command chart is going to get way much bigger. There's going to be branches, and each branch is then going to have some type of chart to work with there. All right. Let me see. We're closing out here. I want to go back to some of those things over there. Yeah, I'll just leave that. Now I'm going to go back to the whiteboard for the folks tracking that along. So let's see where we left off at. Dash cam. How do I get dash cam video? Anybody in the field know how do I get dash cam video? I'll give that a moment. There is a bit of a delay, so I'll wait for them. And how do I get audio files? Looking for an answer from the field, meaning people watching. Go.
All right, so one comment was MCI is certainly where your group branches may need to keep their own charts to tend to trend patients and units. And then one answer here is Stroop. So I guess that's where you can get some information
Chief
from.
Stroop, Battalion Chief Stroop, he is not the keeper of the dash cam, but he is the person that gets the dash cam for you. So you wanted the dash cam from Battalion Chief 701 vehicle, you would need to know the date and the time of the incident, and you would send it to him and say, here's what I need. And he would go through the appropriate channels to get that back to you. It's not like you take a memory stick, load it in, and download it. That does not happen. It comes back as a link to a off-site website type thing. Yes?
So a few comments. Audio files on Tech Ops site, video files from Chief Stroop, request online through quick links for audio. Audio files go through the telecommunication request.
Yep, so on quick links, I should know where that's at, but I don't, because I go a different way. There you go. Under documents, forms, and documents, right here, ECC, audio requesting, and it's an electronic form. You submit battalion chiefs and above. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions. That's how you get that document, right? And it's going to come, or that file, it's going to come to you electronically. You don't go pick up a CD anymore. Right? It's going to be an electronic WAV file type thing. And it's not to be forwarded, right? So when you get this stuff, same way with the dash cam, it's not something that you upload to your YouTube channel. It's not, that is not it. It does not belong to you. It belongs to Montgomery County government, and it is not for you to release. You might be able to release it with proper channels and talking to the fire chief and the PIO. You might be able to use it for training, like stuff that you see that we do in here. Any of my stuff, I would have asked that, hey, I want to display this at training. All right, I want to close out because it's time to move on to something else. Cell phone video, right? Those are out there from the citizens. You probably may or may not grab that, but you can find it on social media and YouTube. Helmet cams. So here's your challenge. Well, not your challenge, but here's your question. I want to know what policy addresses the use of helmet cams. So somebody figure that out and fire that answer back. Brings up the last thing, and I want to close, right? So what about your personal cell phone? We all have those. So you shoot a video, a couple pictures at the fire scene with your personal, not the department issued cell phone, your personal cell phone. What happens with those photos? Are those photos protected? Are they not protected? And what does discoverable mean whenever we talk about evidence? Right? One of the dangers of using your own stuff is, could there not be other stuff then on that phone that somebody could ask to see? If you took pictures of this incident, did you not take pictures of other incidents and so forth, right? So I'm going to caution you. I'm going to tell you, don't take any photos, don't do any business work on your personal cell phone, because as soon as you do business-related work, that can open up many of those documents on that phone to other questions. Not saying you're doing bad stuff. I'm not. You just don't want to have to go through explaining other stuff that's on your phone. Same is true for MDT messages back and forth. Don't be stupid sending stupid messages back and forth to each other on the MDT or on the Zello phone, right? Because the Zello phone, that is all saved for a long time. Everything you ever said is there. All right, so I would like to close out now. Thanks for the folks who brought in their expertise and marked up with some answers. We said that we would talk a bit about incident documentation. There are many, many ways that we document those incidents, right? Past what we would traditionally think about filling out the fire app report. All those ones we listed on the board, those happen all the time. There are many, many different ways. When you have to do a big report, think about all those access points that you got to that data. Do keep in mind that the fire app incident report is the official documentation of that incident. So be cognizant about what you put in there. Be detailed-oriented enough that you could explain that in 3 years in front of a deposition somewhere, and if you got to pull out your personal notes for that, that's okay. That can help you with that. What you don't want is contradictory stuff between all these different reports. So we talked about types. We talked a bit about policy, right? Promotional exams coming up. I'm sure that policy stuff would be important. I'm sure you have to look at some of that. And then issues that arise, we tried to talk about some of those issues. So unless anybody has any other questions, Chief Thomas, anything from the field?
No comments outside of what we already discussed.
Okay.
I do have a reminder for CCOs, if you want to receive COPDI credits, you have to sign back in with your ID number each hour. So you have to do it again on hour 2 if you want to get full credit.
Great. Okay, so I enjoyed talking to you about that stuff. It's a little tricky with no audience, but those of you who chimed in, I appreciate that. It makes it easier on my end. We never did figure out what the Waffle House Index is, but maybe somebody will enlighten us to that. Till then, we're going to take probably a little longer than a 5-minute break, but be ready, be in that 5 to 10 minute. We got to switch out and move to a new topic. Again, thank you, and standalone sessions. Next one up deals with static water supply.